You just heard, of course, us speak with the EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin, proposing rolling back these regulations on greenhouse gas emissions. How will this impact your state?
Well, look, what's called for in these times, and we're seeing the impact of climate change, by the way, in Colorado, the 3 largest fires in the history of our state, all this last decade across the country, increased hail, weather event damage. It costs homeowners money. It endangers lives. So that's clear. You really need an all-of-government approach. Rather than trying to use legal language to squirm out of taking action on climate, we should be looking at what each agency can do to improve climate and reduce our emissions. Like, what can we do, for instance, on transportation? Our Department of Transportation is looking at transit. How can we reduce traffic, reduce emissions? When you look at housing, how do you make sure that people can have affordable housing near job centers, on transit lines, rather than further out where the only option to get to work is a single occupancy vehicle? Of course, air quality, Department of Health. So we really should be asking ourselves these questions in everything we do. How can we reduce emissions, live more sustainably, cleaner air, do our part on climate to reduce some of these costly impacts that we're all feeling?
One, of course, other major area where the Trump administration is changing the lives of Americans is with tariffs. We're seeing this regime go into effect after months of delay. And there are some signs that many of the warnings economists had about it haven't come to pass. There is revenue coming in. There are manufacturers who have committed to building factories in the U.S. Do you see any upside to President Trump's tariff strategy?
Well, there's certainly no upside. I mean, I do still hear some Pollyanna-ish conservative economists that think that what Trump is doing is negotiating to get better tariff rates, get them down to zero. That's the opposite of what we're seeing. With Europe, we've historically had a tariff rate of 2 to 3%. This new deal is 15%, 5 times higher than it's ever been. Americans paying 15% more for many products on the shelf, and of course, discouraging manufacturing from even setting up in the United States. I'm hearing from manufacturing companies that want to establish and invest overseas to avoid our tariffs on the parts and materials they need to make their products. So there's no upside. There is uncertainty. Obviously, we can all hope that President Trump is actually playing some master game to get to zero tariffs, but he seems to like tariffs for the sake of tariffs. They're a tax. They're a regressive tax. They hurt our economy.
Again, on this big picture question of how and where Democrats should push back against President Trump, and if there are areas where his policies should be embraced, you in some ways have broken with others in your party when you posted about RFK Jr. Being tapped to lead the Health and Human Services Department. And since he's taken over that job, he replaced the entire CDC vaccine advisory committee. Considering how you felt about him initially, do you feel the same way now?
Well, to be clear, I've always said I don't agree with him talking about vaccinations in ways that are not true and in many ways could be dangerous, discouraging people from getting vaccinations. Of course, if he's talking about the dangers of processed foods and sugar, trying to ban red number 5 dye, reduce consumption of soda, candy, I'm all for that. I mean, anybody should. It's fact-based. The American people have higher obesity rates than almost any nation. We need to reduce chronic disease. So I think with any part of what the president is doing, if they do something right, I mean, even a stop clock is right twice a day. By all means, let's jump on it, support it, make it happen. At the same time, that actually gives you more credibility to oppose the devastating things that this administration is doing.
So, big picture here. We've been talking a lot about how Democrats find their way back, right? And the reality is, right now, the party is much more unpopular than it was at this point in the first Trump term, right? There were big Democratic gains in the midterm elections in the first Trump term, but the party was relatively popular. It's not right now. What is your diagnosis for that? What's different now? Why are voters unhappy with you?
Well, I would say 2 things. Ultimately, the goal of any political party, hopefully ours, is to win. That means getting to 51%. I hope 55, 58% gives you a little cushion. That means that you have to provide an outlet for people's frustrations from across the ideological spectrum, right? The Democrats need votes from everybody from never Trump conservative Republicans to disaffected socialists to moderates to progressives to liberals. They're all part of the Democratic coalition if we're going to win with 55, 58%. And at the end of the day, what most Americans want to see is a vision for making life better. And that's where Democrats can bring people together. How do we reduce costs? How do we improve the quality of life, make healthcare more affordable, improve the air quality that we breathe, strengthen our economy, get rid of these costly tariffs that are already costing people as they're shopping for back-to-school items hundreds of dollars for their kids on top of what they'd otherwise have to pay. These are simple, common-sense solutions that make a difference in the lives of everyday Americans. And I think Democrats can get to 55, 58% if we stick to those basics.
So one of your fellow Democrats, Kamala Harris, who of course was the party's nominee for president in the end in the most recent election, she just announced she's not going to run for governor of California, which leaves the door open for her to potentially run for president again. Considering what you've laid out about what Democrats need to do, is Kamala Harris the right person to be the Democratic standard bearer in 2028?
Well, it's about the message and what they run on, right? I haven't talked to Kamala about what her plans are. I think what we need is the ability to make sure that we can build that coalition of 55, 58%, win decisively, turn our back on this divisive Trumpian era of politics and move forward with an era of prosperity and opportunity for the American people. And I think it's great that many people will hopefully run to be able to audition to see who has that voice and who's able to get that done and win. And of course, govern effectively to improve our quality of life.
I'm tempted to ask if that's you, sir.
It's not something that I've looked at. I'm focused on governing. It's my job. I have another year and a half as governor of Colorado. We're going to do everything we can to make life even better here.
Fair enough. Governor, thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate it.